Just like geometry, the game. Welcome, this is Tuesday, May 20th, the advanced class-ish. For the homework, here's what I'm going to do with you guys. I want to be able to jump into the reading and the discussion. If I do homework that eats up 10 minutes of class, and I do a bell work with that eats up like another 10 minutes of class, but then leaves us like 15 minutes left doing talking, which is not enough time. So for now, what I'm going to try and do is instead do the trust method. So I will be picking up your notebooks eventually and checking the homework in there, but for now, I'm not going to check the homework today. My goal is that trusting you means that the homework is in there. If you didn't do the homework, congratulations. My faith and trust in you was misplaced and you're a horrible person. If you did have the homework done, congratulations. I put my trust in you and it was well placed. We're both very happy people. If you did extra homework and wanted B points for it, show it to me at the end of class and I will hook you up. And that is absolutely fine with me. Other than that, I figure I'm not going to spend time doing it right now. First challenge. We do have a full team, so make sure those of you who are doing it come and meet us in the cafeteria after school. From this class, we have just 2, 3. Doyle, you're still good after school? Yep. Yay. Tiffany, you're still good after school? 3. And you don't even have to talk. You can do all the mute events. We act silently. And Sweater? Yes. Go, you guys. And so we should be good to go for that. As far as I understand, I think the Globetrotters and the Stars, neither one of them has a full team. So in theory, we'll have the advantage going into it. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. We'll see what happens. I think their teams are falling apart and we're pulling together. So, yay!
Oh, I just realized something. I was going to ask why you put the numbers by them, but that is because of the call period.
Nicely done. I told all my other class I was ranking kids and how much I liked them. And it convinced most of them. I was like, or is class periods. And I went, that's how much you like them. And so I was like, okay, that was fun. But you guys are actually the first class not to ask. Looks like you guys are advanced or something.
We are.
Something. Let's not jump in.
Or not.
Not.
I bet some people.
Then, let's see, we have reading. Where's my book? Uh-oh. Did I give her my book? I might need to grab that book back here. Nope, there's my book. Alright, let's see, we got through. Oh, coming up. My goal for you guys for tomorrow is finish chapter 6. I figure that'll be a good enough compromise. We can talk about what happens at the end of chapter 5, end of chapter 6, and then some other stuff, and then be fine. And then as long as you guys can get through chapter 7 and 8, the 2 shortest chapters, by Thursday, then we should be good. I think that's better than trying to have you guys finish the whole thing by tomorrow, because that seems mean. I'm trying to avoid meanness. I do enough of that in class already. So we'll just get through the end of chapter 6 by tomorrow, and then 7 and 8 by Thursday. The only drawback to 7 and 8 by Thursday is that I don't get to answer questions for you guys. So what I'll do is tomorrow, those of you who have finished 7 and 8, if you have questions, I'll answer them for you. If you've not finished 7 and 8, you'll just have to sit there and go and do your best, or just listen to us and help explain things, because you'll probably have those same questions eventually.
Just wondering, are we allowed to email the company for the reunion?
I brought it in.
You did?
Really?
Oh. Yeah.
I'll get it for you.
All I heard was, I want to get out of my seat.
Oh, okay.
But thank you very much. So I brought it in. We're actually going to read that. That's on my list for things to do. We're going to talk about the reunion scene. I mean, you're welcome to still do it, but you'll just get the same thing I have right here. But I don't want to ruin that bit of fun for you. Let's see. So we got to the man in black, who he was against Inigo yesterday, and then we got Fezzik. With Fezzik, we get the background from Fezzik. Where's Fezzik from? Turkey. Did you guys? Fezzik's background isn't as confusing as Inigo's with Domingo and the six-fingered sword and the slice and the slice and the But if you had questions about his background, I'm more than happy to help. He said yes.
I know.
I know. Have a seat over there. You're welcome to it.
Do you want this one?
Just go over there. You're good to go. Did you guys have questions as far as Fezzik's background goes, with coming from Turkey and the big bay? Oh, what's the national sport of Turkey?
Fighting.
Nicely done. Fighting. And then what is it that Turkish women are really proud of?
Having babies.
Really big babies. Because that way they can roll around and smash the other babies, like in the little playpens and stuff like that. And they have like little baby wars. It's adorable. And so that's where apparently my babies were half Turkish when they were born. They slowly unturked. They were very Turkish when they were babies because they were. But anyway, did you guys? They were adorable, but they know how you have like a gap between your thighs. My daughters didn't. They were born for a long time. It went from chest, stomach, knees, and like their legs came out at the bottom. Unless they're watching this. But yeah, they were kids. They were great. Did you guys have questions as far as that background goes? Yay! Then in the throwdown between the Man in Black and Fezzik, what is supposed to be Fezzik's way of killing people? Yes, dear.
He throws a rock at his
No,
head.
throwing a rock. He chooses not to do that. Why does he not choose that method?
It's not
Black?
It's unsportsmanlike.
It is on. So what does he choose to do instead?
Hand to hand.
Hand-to-hand combat, because he's much bigger than the Man in Black. Wait, who wins? That makes for a good story. And how does the Man in Black beat him?
Choke him.
Nicely done. Does WWE, does a little choky thing like that. He's like, "Arr!" and then he falls down. Then he goes and faces Vizzini, and that's what we're going to get to read that scene today, which is why I'm wearing the shirt I am today. If you've read through that scene, then my shirt makes sense. If you've not read that scene, then it'll
Can
just
you
confuse
move
you. I cannot. I will in a bit. But if you've not read the scene, I won't give stuff away yet, because it's embarrassing, so you'll find out. Now I gotta find the scene. I think it's 150 or 172.
It says 172 up there.
I know, that one might be
It's
wrong.
not 150.
Then it's definitely 150. Because I have two different versions of the book, first period and sixth period, and I didn't have a full set to give both of you guys the same one, so I had to give you guys two different versions. So I had to keep jumping back and forth between two different page numbers. Lots of fun, trust me. I think 150, let's find out. Yes, bottom of page 150. We're going to get to Vizzini was waiting. Hang on, I got to move my
Wait,
gum
it
around a
says
little
over
bit.
there.
I know, were you listening to any of the words we just said?
No.
That's very honest of you, I appreciate it. Vizzini was waiting for him. Indeed, he had set out a little picnic spread. From the knapsack that he always carried, he had taken a small handkerchief, and on it he had placed 2 wine goblets. In the center was a small leather wine holder, and beside it some cheese and some apples. The spot could not have been lovelier. A high point of the mountain path with a splendid view all the way back to Florin Channel. Buttercup lay helpless beside the picnic, gagged and tied and blindfolded. Vizzini held his long knife against her white throat. "Welcome!" Vizzini called when the Man in Black was almost upon them. The Man in Black stopped and surveyed the situation. "You've beaten my Turk," Vizzini said. "It would seem so. And now it is down to you, and it is down to me." "So that would seem too," the Man in Black said, edging just a half step closer to the hunchback's long knife. With a smile, the hunchback pushed the knife harder against Buttercup's throat. It was about to bring blood. "If you wish her dead, by all means, keep moving," Vizzini said. The Man in Black froze. "Better," Vizzini nodded. No sound now beneath the moonlight. "I understand completely what you are trying to do," the Sicilian said finally, "and I want it quite clear that I resent your behavior. You are trying to kidnap what I have rightfully stolen, and I think it quite ungentlemanly." "Let me explain," the Man in Black began, starting to edge forward. "You're killing her!" the Sicilian screamed, shoving harder with the knife. A drop of blood appeared now at Buttercup's throat, red against white. The Man in Black retreated. "Let me explain," he said again, from a distance. Again, the hunchback interrupted. "There is nothing you can tell me I do not already know. I have not had the schooling equal to some, but for knowledge outside of books, there is no one in the world close to me. People say I read minds. That is not in all honesty true. I merely predict the truth using logic and wisdom, and I say you are a kidnapper. Admit it." "I will admit that as a ransom item she has value, nothing more. I've been instructed to do certain things to her. It is very important that I follow my instructions. If I do this properly, I will be in demand for life. And my instructions do not include ransom. They include death. So your explanations are meaningless. We cannot do business together. You wish to keep her alive for ransom, whereas it is terribly important to me that she stop breathing in the very near future. Has it occurred to you that I have gone to great effort and expense, as well as personal sacrifice, to reach this point?" the Man in Black replied. "And that if I fail now, I might get very angry. And if she stops breathing in the very near future, it is entirely possible that you will catch the same fatal illness. I have no doubt you can kill me. Any man who can get by Inigo and Fezzik would have no trouble disposing of me. However, has it occurred to you that if you did that, then neither of us would get what we want? You having lost your ransom item, me my life." "We are at an impasse then," said the Man in Black. "I fear so. I cannot compete with you physically, and you are no match for my brains." "You are that smart. There are no words to contain all my wisdom. I am so cunning, crafty, and clever, so filled with deceit, guile, chicanery, such a knave, so shrewd, cagey as well as calculating, as diabolical as I am vulpine, as tricky as I am untrustworthy. Well, I told you there are not words invented yet to explain how great my brain is, but let me put it this way. The world is several million years old, and several billion people have at one time or another trod upon it. But I, Vizzini the Sicilian, am, speaking with pure candor and modesty, the slickest, sleekest, slyest, and wiliest fellow who has yet come down the pike. In that case, said the man in black, I challenge you to a battle of wits. Vizzini had to smile. For the princess, you read my mind. It just seems that way, I told you. It's merely logic and wisdom. To the death? Correct again. I accept, cried Vizzini. Begin the battle. Pour the wine, said the man in black. Vizzini filled the 2 goblets with deep red liquid. The man in black pulled from his dark clothing a small packet and handed it to the hunchback. Open it and inhale, but be careful not to touch. Vizzini took the packet and followed instructions. I smell nothing. The man in black took the packet again. What you do not smell is called iocane powder. It is odorless, tasteless, and dissolves immediately in any kind of liquid. It also happens to be the deadliest poison known to man. Vizzini was beginning to get excited. I don't suppose you'd hand me the goblets, said the man in black. Vizzini shook his head. Take them yourself. My long knife does not leave her throat. The man in black reached down for the goblets. He took them and turned away. Vizzini cackled aloud in anticipation. The man in black busied himself a long moment. Then he turned again with a goblet in each hand. Very carefully, he put the goblet in his right hand in front of Vizzini, and put the goblet in his left hand across the kerchief from the hunchback. He sat down in front of the left-hand goblet and dropped the empty iocane packet by the cheese. Your guess. Where is the potion? Where is the poison? Guess! Vizzini cried. I don't guess. I think. I ponder. I deduce. Then I decide. But I never guess. The battle of wits has begun, said the man in black. It ends when you decide and we drink the wine and find out who is right and who is dead. We both drink, need I add, and swallow, naturally, at precisely the same time. It's all so simple, said the hunchback. All I have to do is deduce from what I know of you, the way your mind works, and are you the kind of man who would put the poison into his own glass, or into the glass of his enemy? You're stalling, said the man in black. I'm relishing is what I'm doing, answered the Sicilian. No one has challenged my mind in years, and I love it. By the way, may I smell both goblets? Be my guest. Just be sure you put them down the same way you found them. The Sicilian sniffed his own glass. Then he reached across the kerchief for the goblet of the man in black and sniffed that. As you said, odorless. As I also said, you're stalling. The Sicilian smiled and stared at the wine goblets. Now a great fool, he began, would place the wine in his own goblet, because he would know that only another great fool would reach first for what was given. I am clearly not a great fool, so I will clearly not reach for your wine. That's your final choice? No, because you knew I was not a great fool, so you would know that I would never fall for such a trick. You would count on it, so I will clearly not reach for mine either. Keep going, said the man in black. I intend to. The Sicilian reflected a moment. We have now decided the poison cup is most likely in front of you, but the poison is powder made from iocane, and iocane comes only from Australia, and Australia, as everyone knows, is peopled with criminals, and criminals are used to having people not trust them, as I don't trust you, which means I can clearly not choose the wine in front of you. The man in black was starting to get nervous. But again, you must have suspected I knew the origins of iocane, so you would have known I knew about the criminals and criminal behavior, and therefore I can clearly not choose the wine in front of me. Truly, you have dizzying intellect, whispered the man in black. You have beaten my Turk, which means you are exceptionally strong, and exceptionally strong men are convinced that they are too powerful ever to die, too powerful even for iocane poison, so you could have put it in your cup, trusting on your strength to save you. Thus, I can clearly not choose the wine in front of you. The man in black was very nervous now. But you also bested my Spaniard, which means you must have studied, because he studied many years for his excellence, and if you can study, you are clearly more than simply strong. You are aware of how mortal we all are, and you do not wish to die, so you would have kept the poison as far from yourself as possible. Therefore, I can clearly not choose the wine in front of me. You're just trying to make me give something away with all this chatter, said the man in black angrily. Well, it won't work. You'll learn nothing from me, that I promise you. I've already learned everything from you, said the Sicilian. I know where the poison is. Only a genius could deduce as much. How fortunate for me that I happen to be one, said the hunchback, growing more and more amused now. You cannot frighten me, said the man in black, but there was fear all through his voice. Shall we drink, then? Pick, choose, quit dragging it out. You don't know. You couldn't know. The Sicilian only smiled at the outburst. Then a strange look crossed his features, and he pointed off behind the man in black. What the world could that be? He asked. The man in black turned around and looked. I don't see anything. Oh, well, I could have sworn I saw something. No matter. The Sicilian began to laugh. I don't understand what's so funny, said the man in black. Tell me in a minute, said the hunchback. But first, let's drink. And he picked up his own wine goblet. The man in black picked up the one in front of him. They drank. You guessed wrong, said the man in black. You only think I guessed wrong, said the Sicilian, his laughter ringing louder. That's what's so funny. I switched glasses when your back was turned. There was nothing for the man in black to say. Fool! Cried the hunchback. You fell victim to one of the classic blunders. The most famous is never get involved in a land war in Asia, only slightly less well known as this. Never go in against a Sicilian with death is on the line. He was quite cheery until the iocane powder took effect. The man in black stepped quickly over the corpse, then roughly ripped the blindfold from the princess's eyes. I heard everything that happened, Buttercup began, and then she said, oh, because she'd never been next to a dead man before. You killed him, she whispered finally. I let him die laughing, the man in black. Pray I do as much for you. He lifted her, slashed her bonds away, put her on her feet, and started to pull her along. Please, Buttercup said, give me a moment to gather myself. The man in black released his grip. Buttercup rubbed her wrists, stopped, massaged her ankles. She took a final look at the Sicilian. To think, all that time it was your cup that was poisoned. They were both poisoned, said the man in black. I spent the past 2 years building up immunity to iocane powder. That's where my shirt now comes in. It just says, I spent the last few years building two glasses. Every day this week I did a Princess Bride shirt. Makes it fun. Buttercup looked up at him. He was terrifying to her, masked and hooded and dangerous. His voice was strained, rough. Who are you? I am no one to be trifled with, replied the man in black. That is all you ever need to know. And with that, he yanked her upright. You've had your moment. Again, he pulled her after him, and this time she could do nothing but follow. I'm going to stop there. So, we have a little showdown. Vizzini has now died, and now Buttercup is in the possession, if you will, of the man in black. I'm going to jump forward a little bit until we get to the reveal of who the man in black is. I'm going to jump to the reunion scene. Sweater?
What if the man in black
Yes?
is Wesley?
That'd be crazy.
That's what I think.
Wesley's dead.
No, I didn't read it. Wait, is
Hang on, I gotta find it.
Michael.
There it is, and page 160. This is where they take off running, Buttercup and Man in Black, and he's dragging her away so they can try to escape, because we find out the Man in Black has ships waiting for him. Top level. Buttercup stared.
What page?
160.
160.
Buttercup stared, and as she did, the waters of Florin Channel seemed as filled with light as the sky was filled with stars. You must have ordered every ship in Florin after you, the man in black said. Such a sight I've never seen. He stared at all the lanterns and all the ships as they moved. You can never escape him, Buttercup said. If you release me, I promise that you will come to no harm. You are much too generous. I could never accept such an offer. I offered you your life. That was generous enough. Highness, said the man in black, and his hands were suddenly at her throat. If there is talk of life to be done, let me do it. You would not kill me. You did not steal me from murderers to murder me yourself. Wise as well as loving, said the man in black. He jerked her to her feet, and they ran along the edge of the great ravine. It was hundreds of feet deep and filled with rocks and trees and lifting shadows. Abruptly, the man in black stopped, stared back at the armada. "To be honest," he said, "I had not expected quite so many." "You can never predict, my prince. That is why he is the greatest hunter." "I wonder," said the man in black, "will he stay in one group or will he divide, some to search the coastline, some to follow your path on land? What do you think? I only know he will find me, and if you have not given me my freedom first, he will not treat you gently. Surely he must have discussed things with you, the thrill of the hunt. What has he done in the past with many ships? We do not discuss hunting, that I can assure you. Not hunting, not love. What do you talk about? We do not see all that much of each other." Tender couple. Buttercup could feel the upset coming. "We are always very honest with each other. Not everyone can say as much. May I please tell you something, Highness? You're very cold." "I'm not. Very cold and very young. And if you live, I think you'll turn to hoarfrost." "Why do you pick at me? I have come to terms with my life, and that is my affair. I am not cold, I swear, but I have decided certain things. It is best for me to ignore emotion. I have not been happy dealing with it." Her heart was a secret garden, and the walls were very high. "I loved once," Buttercup said after a moment. "It worked out badly." "Another rich man?" "Yes, and he left you for a richer woman." "No, poor, poor, and it killed him." "Were you sorry? Did you feel pain? Admit that you felt nothing." "Do not mock my grief. I died that day." The armada began to fire signal cannons. The explosions echoed through the mountains. The man in black stared as the ships began to change formation. And while he was watching the ships, Buttercup shoved him with all her strength remaining. For a moment, the man in black teetered at the ravine edge. His arms spun like windmills, fighting for balance. They swung and gripped the air, and then he began his slide. Down went the man in black, stumbling and torn and reaching out to stop his descent. But the ravine was too steep, and nothing could be done. Down, down, rolling over rocks, spinning, out of all control. Buttercup stared at what she'd done. Finally, he rested far below her, silent and without motion. "You can die too, for all I care," she said, and then she turned away. Words followed her, whispered from far, weak and warm and familiar. "As you wish." Dawn in the mountains. Buttercup turned back to the source of the sound and stared down as, in first light, the man in black struggled to remove his mask. "Oh, my sweet Wesley," Buttercup said, "what have I done to you now?" From the bottom of the ravine, there came only silence. Buttercup hesitated not a moment. Down she went after him, keeping her feet as best she could, and as she began, she thought she heard him crying out to her over and over, but she could not make sense of his words, because inside her now there was the thunder of walls crumbling, and that was noise enough. Besides, her balance quickly was gone, and the ravine had her. She fell fast, and she fell hard. But what did that matter, since she would have gladly dropped 1,000 feet onto a bed of nails if Wesley had been waiting at the bottom. Down, down, tossed and spinning, crashing, torn out of all control, she rolled and twisted, plunged, cartwheeling toward what was left of her beloved. Because who is the man in black?
Wesley.
Nicely done. And then it jumps to page 168. And here we jump to, because there's a whole bunch more of the prince trying to hunt them down. And this is the next scene with both Wesley, man in black, and then you also have Princess Buttercup. And this is the scene where they sort of get to be back together now at the bottom of the whole ravine. So on 168, where it says Wesley part. Wesley, indeed, had not the least idea that he was racing dead into the fire swamp, which we find out the only place they can go. There's a fire swamp which is just ahead of them, which has 3 dangers in the fire swamp. You know what the 3 dangers of the fire swamp are?
Fire.
Snow sand, which is like quicksand. Fire.
Oh, and
good
then
job.
unknown rodents are like weird, oversized
ROUSs. Rodents of unusual
size.
really big rats. He knew only, once Buttercup was down the ravine bottom beside him, that to climb out would take, as Prince Humperdinck had assumed, too much time. Wesley noted only that the ravine bottom was flat rock, and heading in the general direction he wanted to follow. So he and Buttercup fled along, both of them very much aware that gigantic forces were following them and, undoubtedly, cutting into their lead. The ravine grew increasingly sheer as they went along, and Wesley soon realized that whereas once he probably could have helped her through the climb, now there was simply no way of doing so. He'd made his choice, and there was no changing possible. Wherever the ravine led was their destination, and that, quite simply, was that. At this point in the story, and this is Morgenstern talking, my wife wants it known that she feels violently cheated, not being allowed the scene of reconciliation on the ravine floor between the lovers. My reply to her, this is me, and me being Goldman. So that was Morgenstern interrupting his own story, and this is now Goldman interrupting Morgenstern, who is interrupting himself. Not confusing. This is me, Goldman. And I'm not trying to be confusing, but the above paragraph that I'm cutting into now is verbatim Morgenstern. Verbatim means
Word by word.
Yeah, word for word. You're not changing anything. He was continually referring to his wife in the unabridged book, saying that she loved the next section, or she thought that all in all the book was extraordinarily brilliant. Mrs. Morgenstern was rarely anything but supportive to her husband, unlike some wives I could mention. Sorry about that, Helen. But here's the thing. I got rid of almost all the intrusions when he told us what she thought. I didn't think the device added a whole lot, and besides, he was always complimenting himself through her, and today we know that hyping something too much does more harm than good, as any defeated political candidate will tell you when he pays his television bills. The thing of it is, I left this particular reference in because for once, I totally happen to agree with Mrs. Morgenstern. I think it was... Totally happen to agree with Mrs. Morgenstern. I think it was unfair not to show the reunion. So, I wrote one of my own. What I felt Buttercup and Wesley might have said, but Hiram, my editor, felt that made me just as unfair as Morgenstern. Hiccup again. If you're going to abridge a book in the author's own words, you can't go around sticking your own in. That was Hiram's point. And we really went round and round, arguing over, I guess, a period of a month. In person, through letters, on the phone. Finally, we compromised to this extent. What you're reading in the regular type is strict Morgenstern. Verbatim. Cut, yes. Changed, no. But I got Hiram to agree that Harcourt would at least print up my scene. Valentine has agreed to do the same. It's all of 3 pages, big deal. And if any of you want to see what it came out like, drop blah 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 address. And just mention you'd like the reunion scene. Don't forget to include your return address, blah 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 blah. See, the publishers agreed to spring for the postage cost, so your total expense is the note or card or whatever. It really upset me if I turned out to be the only modern American writer who gave the impression that he was with a generous publishing house. They all stink. Sorry about that, Mr. Jovanovich. So let me just add here that the reason they are so generous in paying this giant postage bill is because they fully expect nobody to write in. So please, if you have the least interest at all, or even if you don't, write in for my reunion scene. You don't have to read it. I'm not asking that. But I would love to cost those publishing geniuses a few dollars. Because, let's face it, they're not spending much on advertising my books. Let me just repeat it, blah, 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 or email, blah, 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 blah. And just ask for a copy of the reunion scene. This has gone on longer than I planned, so I'm going to repeat the Morgenstern. So then he goes back and it has continuing on. You send in for the reunion scene, and that's what I have here that I can read to you. For one, now you see why partly we had to read that introduction by Goldman with his little introductions and cuts that he does. Because if we didn't read that introduction, then when we get to this part, I have to stop and start explaining all about why is this random man trying to rewrite parts of the book. And you're like, I'm just going to... So we read that beginning part, and it makes these bits make more sense. So hopefully you follow with me on that one. All right. Good news and bad news for the reunion scene. Good news is, I have it. The bad news is, it's not what you think it is. Because there were lawsuits and issues. Refer to this guy who was an actor from way back in the black and white days. And they're going to refer to a guy that looks like him. So picture this guy when they talk about it in the thing. The reunion scene. Dear reader, thank you for sending in. And no, this is not the reunion scene. Because of a certain roadblock named Kermit Shog. As soon as bound books were ready, I got a call from my lawyer, Charlie. You may not remember, but Charlie's the one I called from California to go down to the Blizzard and buy The Princess Bride from the used book dealer. Anyway, he usually begins with some humor, wisdom jokes, only this time he just says, "Bill, I think you better get down here." And before I'm even allowed a lie, he adds, "Right away, if you can." Panicked, I zoomed down, wondering who could have died. Did I flunk my tax audit? What? His secretary lets me into his office, and Charlie says, "This is Mr. Shogg, Bill." And there he is, sitting in the corner, hands on his briefcase, looking exactly like an oily version of Peter Lorre. I really expected him to say, "Give me the falcon you must, or I'll be forced to kill you." It's a line from a movie he was in, The Maltese Falcon, which is an awesome movie and an even better book. But it's from back in black and white days. "Mr. Shogg is a lawyer," Charlie goes on. In his next was said underlined, "He represents the Morgenstern estate." Who knew? Who could have dreamed such a thing existed? In a state of a man dead at least 1,000,000 years that no one ever heard of. Well, over here anyway. "Perhaps you will give me the falcon now," Mr. Shogg said. Okay, that's not true. What he said was, "Perhaps you'll like a few words with your client alone now." And Charlie nodded, and out he went. And once he was gone, I said, "Charlie, my God, I never figured." And he said, "Did Harcourt?" I said, "Not that they ever mentioned." And he said, "Ugh," the grunting sound lawyers make when they know they've backed a loser. "What does he want?" I said. "A meeting with Mr. Jovanovich," Charlie answered. Now, William Jovanovich is a pretty busy fella, but it's amazing when you're confronted with a potential multi-billion-dollar lawsuit how fast you can wedge in a meeting. We trooped over. All the Harcourt brass was there. I'm there, Charlie, Mr. Shogg, who's sweating an igloo, he's so swarthy he's streaming. Harcourt's lawyer started things. "We're terribly, terribly sorry, Mr. Shogg. It's an unforgivable oversight, and please accept our sincerest apologies." Mr. Shogg said, "That's a beginning. Since all you did was defame and ridicule the greatest modern master of Florinese prose, who also happened to be for many years a friend of my family." Then the business head of Harcourt said, "All right, how much do you want?" "Big mistake." "Money?" Mr. Shogg cried. "You think this is petty blackmail that brings us together? Resurrection is the issue, sir. Morgenstern must be undefiled. You will publish the original version," and now look at me, "in the unabridged form." And I said, "I'm done with it, I swear. True, there's just the reunion scene business we printed out, but there's not liable to be a rush on that. So it's all past as far as I'm concerned." But Mr. Shogg wasn't done with me. "You, who dared to defame a master's characters, are going to put your words in their mouths? No, sir. No, I say. It's just a little thing," I tried. "A couple pages only." Then Mr. Jovanovich started talking softly. "Bill, I think we might skip sending out the reunion scene just now. Don't you think?" I made a nod. Then he turned to Mr. Shogg. "We'll print the unabridged. You're a man who's interested in immortality for his client, and there aren't as many of you around in publishing as there used to be. You're a gentleman, sir." "Thank you," from Mr. Shogg. "I like to think I am, at least on occasion." For the first time, he smiled. We all smiled. Very buddy-buddy now. Then, an addendum from Mr. Shogg. "Oh, yes. Your first printing of the unabridged will be 100,000 copies. So far, there are 13 lawsuits, only 11 involving me directly. Charlie promises nothing will come to court, and that eventually Harcourt will publish the unabridged, but legal maneuvering takes time. The copyright on Morgenstern's runs out in early '78, and all of you who wrote in are having your names put alphabetically on computers. So, whichever happens first, the settlement or the year, you'll get your copy. The last I was told, Kermit Shogg was willing to come down in his first printing, provided Harcourt agreed to publish the sequel, Princess Bride, which hasn't been translated into English yet, much less published here. The title of the sequel is Buttercup's Baby, S. Morgenstern's glorious examination of courage matched against the death of the heart. And you have the first part of that book at the end of yours. It should be at the very end of it. I'd never heard of it, naturally, but there's a PhD candidate in Florinese Lit up at Columbia who's going through it now. I'm kind of interested in what he has to say. William Goldman. So in other words, no reunion scene because of the lawsuits. And then in 19 78, they released more information. I'm really, really sorry about this. But you know the story that ends, disregard previous wire, letter follows. Well, you've got to disregard the business about the Morgenstern copyright running out in 78. That was a definite boo-boo. But Mr. Shaw, being Florinese, has trouble naturally with our numbering system. The copyright runs out in 87, not 78. Worse, he died. Mr. Shaw, I mean, don't ask how, you could tell. It was easy. One morning, he just stopped sweating. So there it was. What makes it worse, that the whole affair is now in the hands of his kid, named, wait for it, Mandrake Shaw. Mandrake moved all the bird and speed of a lizard flaked out on a riverbank. The only good thing that's happened in this whole mess is I finally got a shot at reading Buttercup's Baby. Up at Columbia, they feel it's definitely superior to The Princess Bride in satirical content. Personally, I don't have the emotional attachment to it, but it's a heck of a story, no question. Give it a look-see when you have a chance. Buttercup's Baby is more action-oriented, but I don't like it as much either. Just because I really like Princess Bride. Buttercup's Baby is kind of neat. It's got a bad guy that has like no face, and he goes around and kills like Fezzik and stuff like that. So it's like all action-y. Oh, sorry. Spoiler. But, and so, you'll get there with Fezzik survives the Princess Bride. Yay! But he dies in the next one. So you can get there when you read it. Or don't read it. Just never read it, and he'll always live forever. Then, in 1987, he released another part. Alright, this is getting humiliating. This is what he sent out starting in 1987. Have you been reading in the papers about the trade problems America's having with Japan? Well, maddening as they may be, since it reflects on the reunion scene, we're also having trade problems with fluorine, which, it turns out, is our leading supplier of cadmium, which, it also turns out, NASA is panting for. So all Florence American litigation, which includes the 13 lawsuits, has officially been put on hold. What this means is that the reunion scene, for now, is caught between our need for cadmium and diplomatic relations between the two countries. But at least the movie got made, Mandrake Shaw was shown it, and word reached me he even smiled once or twice. Hope springs eternal. And that's where it stopped. After that, the movies they came out, they sort of fade off, and the last I've heard, they're not sending out the actual reunion scene. They're just sort of giving up, and they've shelved it and sort of staying at the little publishing house or whatever it is. So this is all you get when you send it in. And William Goldman's still alive, but he's given up on ever actually getting the reunion scene out. So that's what you get. It's disappointing, but now you understand if you have the information. What was that? Old 80s? Right around there?
It says in here.
Coming up, in Chapter 6, they're going to talk about the albino. And albino is someone that has no pigmentation to their skin. And so that's the example of that's the actual albino from the movie. And those are just other examples of albinos. So when they talk about albinos, I want you to have an idea of what to picture. When you get to the actual Zoo of Death, you're going to find out that there's someone they're keeping in the Zoo of Death. And the albino is the one in charge of the whole Zoo of Death and stuff like that. Also, I'm going to offer B points. If you can find me, because I realized might as well try and find a copy of the original, because I don't have one. So I'm going to try and see, now that I'm older and have money, if I can track down an original copy. If you can find me a link copy, because I don't have time because there's stuff going on, to the original full-length, one that has nothing to do with Goldman, I will give B points. Here's the trick, because I'm not an idiot. The more people who do it, the fewer points you get. Because if not, you'll just all find one link and just send it to each other via Instagram, and you guys all send it to me, and you all get points. So I ain't going to do that. So if a whole bunch of you send it in, I'll give you 1 point. If there's just like 1 or 2 of you, then I'll give you like 10 points. And so I figured that way, if you guys don't try and cheat. But if you find a link and you can give me information. Now, when you do it, I want the one that doesn't have Goldman involved. And not the one, he wrote a second book. S. Morgenstern wrote a book called The Silent Gondoliers. I found that one and bought it. So I don't care about The Silent Gondoliers by S. Morgenstern. I'm looking for the first Princess Bride. Sure, you're halfway out of your seat already. Take off!